Hey guys, it's me Astrid, and it's time to talk about my Orchid Society meeting discussion. First, I need to go on a rant, and if you don't want to hear me bitch about stuff, just skip on ahead. I'll try to put a time marker. But one thing I want to talk about is I'm annoyed because last time I talked about dendrobiums, I said dendrobium biggie bum is not pronounced biggie bum because someone very knowledgeable in my Orchid Society told me it is not biggie bum, it's bi-gibbum because it's named referencing the bi-gibbous moon, the gibbous moon, okay? So if it's named for that and there's already a pronunciation of gibbous, which I looked up, gibbous, then that's legit. And now Fred Clark, who is an AOS judge, a prolific hybridizer, a very knowledgeable guy who's been growing orchids 40 years, came and said, hey guys, let's talk about dendrobium biggie bum. Except it's not biggie bum, even though that's fun to say, it's bi-gibbum. So Fred Clark is saying bi-gibbum, knowledgeable guy is saying bi-gibbum, so it's one of the two. It's bi-gibbum or bi-gibbum, but I don't need no sass about my biggie bums anymore, okay? That case is closed. I got a text message. That case is closed. Don't sass me about stuff. I will always preface stuff that I'm not sure about by saying that I'm not sure about it. Otherwise, I wouldn't share it on my channel because I don't like partaking in promoting misinformation around. And if I'm not sure, I'm not sure, and I always tell you guys. Rant over. Let's talk about what we talked about last night, which is Australian dendrobiums. But the other things that I'm going to focus even more on are fertilizers, which was, I had no idea Fred was going to talk about fertilizers, but the discussion was very interesting and very helpful and informative. So I'm going to do a little bit about the Aussie dens and a little more about fertilizer and a little bit about sterile procedures with your plants, because that's kind of what we talked about last night. And I want to open up a little discussion in the comments. Let me know what you guys think, and let's get started. Okay. So we got Aussie dens. Now Fred showed some of them growing in nature, which I drew like this. Basically an orchid like this can get really big and they grow on top of a rock or on the side of a rock. Okay, and they have lots of detritus scattered around their roots. So basically they spend part of the year very, very dry and another part of the year very, very wet. And because of this, they definitely need a cool, dry winter rest. And they also need really nice, heavy watering in the summertime, generally speaking, about Australian dendrobiums. So if you know that, then you can kind of understand why we say you need a winter rest for this orchid. You see where it grows in nature, you know why it grows that way. And he talked about the different important species of Australian dendrobiums, which are Speciosum kingianum, he pronounced kingianum, not kingianum, tetragonum, oh my god, I'm so popular, falcorostrum, fleckeri, and bi-gibbum. Now, he discussed a lot, one like Speciosum has flowers that open and close at night and for about a week until they kind of set open, which was funny. Then tetragonum has these really cool thin bases of its pseudobulbs that thicken out and become a square shape. So dendrobium tetragonum has these square shaped pseudobulbs which are really cool. And if any of you guys have dendrobium fleckeri, Fred Clark wants one, so get in touch with him. He said that at the meeting, but I figure if I say it on YouTube, it'll get around more. If you got dendrobium fleckeri, contact Fred Clark, he'll love you. And tell him I sent you so I get brownie points. Yeah. On watering these dendrobiums, Fred Clark said, wait till it's dry, then wait a week and then water it for winter time, I think. So wait till the plant gets dry, wait another week, and then water it. He doesn't believe in letting them go completely dry in winter time, but watering them very seldom. And in summer, of course, you're going to water and fertilize regularly. He said that dendrobiums from Aussie dens do not like large containers. As evidenced, he has demonstrated this with this dendrobium, which he gave to me. And it's got very tight shoes on. This is a plant that's this big, but it's in a pot that's this small. This is about My wrist is 2 inches, so this is 3 inches tall. I don't know how I feel about that, but he's been growing plants 40 years. He does what works for him, but I know a lot of people, some people do grow orchids in large pots, and I know that in nature, orchids don't grow in a constrained area. So my ideas on this are, you know, every nursery grower is going to have their methods that are successful for them. And that's awesome. And I'm not disrespecting anyone's opinion here, but I am questioning it because I just, as an experiment, really over-potted 2 of my big oncidiums. 1, because I want them to grow and have a lot of room to grow for a long time, and 2, because they're in semi-hydroponics, so the media isn't going to break down over the years, which I think is kind of important. So with the large pot size giving them room to grow a lot of years and the medium that's not going to break down because it's clay pellets, I don't see why you would want to pot it tightly. But one reason I think people suggest that you pot your orchids tightly is because if you pot them in a large pot, the center of the pot doesn't dry out as quickly. So when the center of your pot doesn't dry out as quickly, you do run the risk of rotting your roots and having other issues like that. That said, in semi-hydroponic, I can reach down into the pellets and I feel them moist all the time. But there are 2 differences here that I want to touch on that this is my idea. So Ray Barkalow, who pioneered semi-hydroponic growing method, he calculated, and you can do this as like an inorganic chemistry calculation, is if you have hard spheres, which is a basis of a lot of inorganic chemistry, crystallography, like the basis of that knowledge. If you imagine the things are hard spheres, which leca beads are literally hard spheroids, they're almost spherical. You can mathematically calculate that the way that they pack, you will have 40% open space in the pot. So you can do a calculation and calculate there's open space all through the pot if they're equal sizes. They have to be equal size and they have to be hard spheres. So that allows a lot of airflow to always be inside of the pot. Now, if you're using bark media, it packs together a lot more efficiently because it's got a lot of different shapes that can work their way into each other. So you don't have as much open space inside of a pot if you're using a bark medium. So what I'm thinking is that you can overpot with semi-hydroponic, but with bark you shouldn't overpot because it will take longer to dry in the middle because there isn't all that 40% open space like you get when you use leca pellets. So that's my idea and opinion on potting and overpotting and why people say you need to put these orchids in really tight pots or not. Those are my ideas. Let me know what you think because I don't know if that's true or not. This is just me kind of putting it out there, putting my ideas out there and going back and forth on them with you. So he did comment on the large containers and said Aussie dens don't like them. And any dendrobium doesn't really like a large container. So that's, for me, that's up in the air, but for him, that's a settled deal, like tight pots. And I'm like, okay. The next thing, and this is now kind of off the topic of Aussie dens, is fertilizer. Really, really interesting talk on fertilizer last night. So he talked about basic water and acidic water. Now, if you don't know about acidity and basicity, basically, pun not intended, if you have an acid, your pH is going to be down here, like the most acidic. The common most acidic is 0 and the common most basic is 14. So it's a scale that goes 0 to 14. And in the middle, the neutral pH is 7. A lot of water has a pH around 7. I think your blood has a pH kind of around 7. A lot of, neutral things have that pH. So, or that's considered a neutral pH. And so when you lower the pH, you're getting more acidic. You get from like neutral is like regular water, you get down to milk, then like orange juice, then like battery acid. And then you go basic from pH 7, you go to like, I don't know, Tums or something, you go to like milk of magnesia, and then you go to like lye used for making soap. That's the really basic side of things. So 1 to 14, acidic to basic, neutral is about 7. So Fred said that orchids, or at least Australian dendrobiums, tend to like a pH of 5.5 to 6.5. What does that mean? That means they like it a tiny bit on the acidic side. One thing I also want to point out about pH scale is that it's a logarithmic scale. And for the lay people here who don't major in chemistry or in math, your logarithmic scale goes up by orders of 10. So from 7 to 6, if you were at 6 and you had like 10 things and you went to 7, it would be now 100 things. And if you went to 8, it would be now 1,000 things. So it goes up by orders of 10, not just by 1, 2, 3. So a pH difference that goes from like 6 to 3 is huge. So you have to be mindful with your pH. Sorry, I'm talking a long time, but I hope you guys still really are enjoying this. Now, he was discussing orchids like 5.5 to 6.5 pH, a little acidic, like I said, and as high as 7, which is neutral pH. He said that if the medium and the pH that your orchids experience is getting too basic, it will kind of block them from their nutrient uptake, so they can't take in those nutrients, they won't grow as well. Now, if you have hard water, he said you probably have a lot of bicarbonates in your water. Bicarbonate, we have bicarbonates commonly in a household. That's sodium bicarbonate or baking soda. And baking soda is very basic. You mix it with vinegar, which is very acidic, and they have that fun reaction where they neutralize each other. You take a base and an acid, they react sometimes violently and neutralize each other. Baking soda is basic. It's sodium bicarbonate. So if you have lots of bicarbonates in your water, your pH is going to be higher. It's going to be more basic, so you need to have something to lower your pH. If you use a 20-20-20 fertilizer, that means 20 nitrogen, 20 phosphorus, and 20 potassium, NPK. If you have high phosphorus, the phosphorus I think reacts, I haven't read about this, so please don't quote me exactly on this. Phosphorus will lower the pH in the bicarbonate and reduce the pH. So it will acidify your soil a little bit and help your orchid with that nutrient uptake. So if you have really hard water and you have high bicarbonates and your pH is kind of high in your water, use a 20-20-20, use a higher amount of phosphorus, and you'll probably have better nutrient uptake in your orchids. I thought that was super interesting. And if you have a low pH and you have pure water, my city, I just checked, has really pure water. The water is got 25 parts per million of total dissolved solids. That is super low. Fred said that some of the reverse osmosis water that he uses has 15 parts per million total dissolved solids. So that's how I've been watering my carnivorous plant with tap water the whole time, and I haven't killed it, is because it's almost as good as reverse osmosis water. It's almost that pure. Now, if your water is that pure, it doesn't have that baking soda. I don't think it's truly baking soda, but the bicarbonates in it. So your pH is going to be lower. It's already going to be a little acidic. So you want to use 15, 5, 15. So 15 nitrogen, 5 phosphorus, 15 potassium. Now that 5, that lower P, is going to avoid acidifying your soil further, and it's going to help your plant take in more nutrients. Fred said also if you've got low total dissolved solids, low ppm in your water, I got an email. You also want to have calcium and magnesium supplemented because there's not as much bicarbonate in pure water, and you need calcium and magnesium to help something. I haven't read about this. So all the things I'm saying about fertilizer, take what I'm saying, go read about it yourself and educate yourself, because I'm here to just give you the idea and you can go see if it's true or not, or if you agree with it or not. Let's see. He also really advocated using a small amount of fertilizer every time you water, and I'm trying to do that, so that makes sense to me. Apparently Fred Clark was once a poinsettia kingpin. I guess he was responsible for like 70% of all poinsettias in the world or something like that. That's pretty wild. But he realized through growing them that a small amount of fertilizer all the time gave them, on an industrial plant growing scale, healthier plants, happier plants, more successful plants. So small amount of fertilizer every time is probably good for orchids too, he said. Also, to test the pH of your water, he had a good method that he listed. He said water your orchid with the fertilizer you choose really heavily, just really water, water, water. And to see what your orchid is experiencing, don't just test the water you're putting in the pot. Water it, wait for the water to drip out, and catch the last 20 drips of water. And when you catch these last 20 drips of water, you test the pH of that. And when you test the pH of that, that's what your plant's experiencing, and you can adjust your fertilizing and your water quality based on that. So that was super helpful information for me. If you don't have pH paper or any way to test pH, you can boil red cabbage in your home and get a kind of idea and use that as a pH indicator. Seriously, look it up. If you boil red cabbage and boil it down, you can use that liquid to indicate pH, which is really cool, and I've done it at home myself, and it's like so awesome. All right. Fred said he uses 100 parts per million nitrogen in each watering. I think that's good. And you can use an EC meter to test this. I think that's good. PAFs want less. PAFs want 50 ppm nitrogen. That's funny. So Fred also said something that the stoma on the leaves of orchids are on the undersides of the leaves. So foliar feed might not work. He said he thinks foliar feed works because nutrients get on the leaves and then you wash them into the pot when you're watering, which I thought was really funny. I don't do foliar feeding with orchids. I don't really care about it. Oh my God. I got an email from Andy's Orchids right now. Did you? So yeah. There's that. Now for care of Australian dendrobiums, said light, 3,000 to 3,500 foot candles. Temps in summer, 75 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Winter, 40 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Will tolerate short periods with 110 Fahrenheit or 43 Celsius and as low as 33 Fahrenheit or 0.5 Celsius. He said in Australia they don't grow Aussie dens in heated greenhouses. And he also said if you live in a cloudy area, as long as your Aussie dens get good sun in summertime, then the low light in winter is okay. He said, Fred also had a talk about kiwi bark versus orchiata bark. And he really kind of said some stuff about orchiata bark that made me feel like maybe I'll try kiwi bark instead. I think Danny has been talking about kiwi bark a lot and said she liked it. But he likes kiwi bark because it maintains the pH of your soil better. It doesn't decompose as quickly. I think he thinks orchiata is a bunk product. And he says what they do is they pile up the bark, they just lime it, which is a common horticultural practice, and then the lime is going to wear off from that orchiata bark over a year or two every time you wash it away, and then that lime is going to be gone, and then your potting mix is going to acidify, and he didn't like it. He said kiwi bark doesn't do that, and it lasts a lot longer. So if you're curious about kiwi bark, Fred Clark loves it. He promoted it. He liked it. And because of the pH change caused in orchiata over a couple years, and this is just what someone else told me. He said, roots want to stay in the environment that they form in. So if you have a bark that is going to go from 1 pH and acidify, and it's going to be dramatic. Remember how I said it's steps of 10-fold each number pH scale? If you go from like a 6 to a 4 pH, that's a lot. So I think that's like, 1,000 times more acidic than it was before, and so the roots aren't going to be happy with you. And let's see, the last helpful tip I want to tell you is that Fred dates his plant tags based on 1 week before the new roots came out. So if you've got a new growth, let's say there was a new growth coming on this orchid, he repots it right when the new roots are about this long. Okay, so the roots get this long on your Aussie den. And right then he remembers a week ahead of when they came out and dates the tag that way. So if you date your tag with a week ahead of when the roots came out, you can repot it the next time in a few years. You repot it the next time, and you'll repot it just before the new baby roots come out. And how happy is your plant going to be? I thought that was a brilliant idea. I thought that's an awesome tip, and I think I'm going to do that because it's really super smart. Yes. And the last things I want to say about Fred Clark is that he went on like a 15-20 minute spiel about how to do sterile repotting. Gloves, sterile scissors, clean bark. You put newspaper down and then take the newspaper off and put a new orchid there, sterile surfaces, because he doesn't want to spread diseases. So if you want to buy orchids from Fred Clark, I think you can very much trust that his plants are all going to be healthy, because even though they probably don't have viruses, he treats every single one like it is diseased and therefore keeps them from spreading things to each other. So I feel like if you get an orchid from Fred Clark, from Sunset Valley Orchids, which is his company, you're going to get a really healthy plant, because he was really adamant about this stuff last night, and I thought that was cool. That made me feel confident in my purchases, like extra confident. And yeah. He also told us about an Australian dendrobium that was blue, and that is the Thelymitra crinta, I think is how you say it, orchid. And it is actually a little bit blue looking, which is cool. So that is a long talk. I'm not going to edit this down. I'm not going to do anything to it. I'm just going to let you guys go ahead and watch this. I'm sure some of you will want to listen to the whole thing. If you've listened to the whole thing, thanks. If you didn't, I guess I'll try to time mark it so you guys can see different things that I talk about, and so you can jump to parts that you are interested in. And yeah, thank you. Let me know how you feel about my presentation of these ideas, how you feel about how I organized it, how it's just kind of a conversational thing. If you like that or not, let me know what you think. And thanks for watching, and happy growing, and have a nice day. Bye guys.